Welcome back to the pack here at Linas Romantasy collection, and a massive warm welcome to our new listeners brave enough to face the cold. Today, we are dropping you straight into a frozen apocalypse where the temperature outside is fatal, but the heat inside is absolutely scandalous. Rumi is a freezing engineer who thinks she's being summoned for treason, but when the elevator doors open, she doesn't find a torture chamber. She finds a sweltering penthouse and a massive shirtless warlord who is literally burning alive. He doesn't need a mechanic, he needs a coolant, and he has decided that she is the only one who can handle his fire. But before we enter the frozen wasteland, make sure you are equipped for survival. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon to officially join the resistance. We don't want you freezing out there alone. If you want to see Rumi teach this arrogant warlord a lesson he'll never forget, smash the like button right now. Let's see if we can get this video to 5,000 likes to keep the generator running. Also, I want to know where my resistance fighters are stationed. Drop a comment down below and tell me which country or city you are listening from today. I love seeing how far our pack extends. Now, grab a blanket, get comfortable, and let's melt some ice. The year is 2142. It has been 50 years since the Great Correction. That was the lie they told us, anyway. The corporations said they were launching satellites to cool the warming Earth. Instead, they blocked out the sun. In 1 week, the oceans turned to glass. The skyscrapers became tombstones. The rich, they retreated to the high towers, powered by the last geothermal cores. The rest of us, we were shoved into the sub-basements to rot. My name is Rumi Kato. My parents were the lead engineers on the core project. They tried to stop the freeze. They were executed for it. Now, I survive in the sludge they left behind, fixing the machines that keep my parents' murderers warm. But the temperature is dropping, and the warlord of Sector 4 just woke up. They say he's a monster. They say he has a heart of ice. They're wrong. He's burning, and he's looking for someone to handle the heat. Chapter 1. The temperature in sub-basement C was exactly 42 degrees. I knew this because I could see my breath, and my wrench was sticking to my palm. "Rumi, incoming!" I ducked just as a rusted pipe burst overhead, spraying lukewarm sludge onto the metal grating where I had been standing. "Thanks, Tio!" I yelled at my assistant, wiping grease from my goggles. "That's the 3rd time this week. Tell the upper levels if they flush one more time while I'm calibrating the pressure valves, I'm going to reverse the flow and give them a brown fountain." Tio, a scrawny kid wrapped in 3 layers of scavenged wool, slid down the ladder. "You can't threaten the upper levels, Rumi. That's treason. Warlord Bram will have us thrown out the airlock." "Warlord Bram can kiss my frozen assets," I grumbled, tightening the bolt. "He sits up there in the high tower, hoarding all the geothermal output, while we're down here knitting socks out of dryer lint." Beep, beep. The red light on the wall flashed. That wasn't the sludge alarm. That was the command summon. The intercom crackled. "Citizen Rumi Kato, report to the high tower immediately. Priority Alpha." Tio went pale. "Priority Alpha? Rumi, what did you do? Did you actually reverse the sewage?" "No." I scrambled to pack my tool belt. I might have sent a strongly worded email to the governor's office about the inefficiency of their radiant floor heating." "You emailed the warlord?" "I CC'd him. It was constructive criticism." 2 enforcers, huge men in black thermal armor, marched into the maintenance bay. They didn't look like they were here for constructive criticism. "Come." The lead enforcer grunted. "I need my tools," I snapped, grabbing my heavy bag. "If you're going to execute me, I'm going to disassemble the electric chair first." They didn't laugh. They dragged me to the express elevator. We shot up. The temperature gauge on the wall climbed. 50 degrees, 60 degrees, 70 degrees. By the time the doors opened on the penthouse level, it was a sweltering 80 degrees.
I stepped out, sweating instantly in my coveralls. The room was massive, draped in velvet and steel, overlooking the frozen white wasteland of the dead city outside. And there, standing by a massive, sputtering ventilation unit, was Warlord Bram. He was huge. That was the only word for it. He had to be 6'6", with shoulders that spanned the width of a doorway. He had messy dark hair, a beard that looked like it could sand wood, and scars running down his arms. And he was shirtless. "You," Bram growled, turning to face me. His voice sounded like rocks tumbling down a mountain. I didn't power. I was too hot and too annoyed. "Put a shirt on. It's a sauna in here. What is wrong with you people? Do you burn heat credits for fun?" The enforcers gasped. Bram blinked. He looked down at his bare chest, then back at me. His eyes were dark, intense, and confused. "It is broken." Bram gestured vaguely at the expensive climate control unit on the wall. "It keeps making noise." "So you called a priority alpha summon because your AC is rattling?" I marched past him, shoving my tool bag onto his mahogany desk. I thought I was being arrested for treason. "Command," Bram commanded, crossing his massive arms. "It is too hot." "It's 80 degrees!" I yelled, pulling out a screwdriver. "Of course it's too hot. You have the thermostat set to volcano. Who even designed this?" I ripped the panel off the wall. "Look at this. The sensor is jammed. Did you try to adjust this with a hammer?" "My fingers are large," Bram muttered, looking slightly ashamed. I looked at him. The terrifying warlord of Sector 4 looked like a giant, pouting child who had broken his favorite toy. "Sit down." I pointed at the sofa with my screwdriver. "And don't touch anything. My father designed these thermal regulators to last a century. It took a warlord 5 minutes to smash it." Bram looked at me, tilting his head. "Your father?" I snapped, my voice cracking slightly. "The lead engineer, before Haynes's grandfather had him thrown out the airlock for insubordination. He taught me that machines have rules. Warlords don't. Now sit." Bram sat. He actually sat. And for some reason, he was smiling. It took me 20 minutes to bypass the damaged sensor. During that time, Bram didn't move. He just watched me. It was unnerving. Most upper-level snobs ignored the maintenance crew. We were just grease-stained furniture to them. But Bram watched my hands like I was performing open-heart surgery. "There," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "I rerouted the intake. The temperature should drop to a livable 68 degrees in 10 minutes. I stood up, wiping my hands on my coveralls. "That will be 50 heat credits, payable to Sub-Basement C's ration account." Bram stood up. He moved with a grace that shouldn't be possible for a man his size. He walked over to me, invading my personal space. He smelled like pine needles and wood smoke, a sharp, wild scent that cut through the recycled air of the dome. "You are loud," Bram stated, looking down at me. "I am efficient," I corrected, lifting my chin. I had to crane my neck to look him in the eye. "And you are wasteful. Do you know how much energy this penthouse consumes? I could heat 3 orphanages with what you use to keep your bedroom at tropical temperatures." "I do not like the heat," Bram said, his voice low. "My body runs hot. I cannot cool down." I looked at his skin. He was glistening with sweat. Even though the room was cooling rapidly, I instinctively reached out and touched his arm. It was burning. "Whoa," I pulled back. "You're running a fever. You're burning up. Do you have radiation sickness?" "No," he grunted, stepping back. "It is genetic. High metabolism." "Well, you need a doctor, not an engineer." I packed my bag. "Can I go now? I have a sewage pipe to unblock." "No." Bram walked to his desk and pressed a button. The heavy steel doors of the penthouse locked with a loud clang. "Excuse me?" I brandished my wrench. "This is kidnapping. I have rights, sort of. Technically, I'm a Class C citizen, but I still have rights." "You are promoted," Bram announced. "Promoted to what? Prisoner?" "Personal engineer," Bram said. "You will stay here, in the tower. You will fix the temperature. You will make sure it never gets hot again." "I can't live in the tower. My friends are downstairs. My stuff is downstairs." I will have your stuff moved. Bram sat behind his desk, picking up a datapad. The screen cracked slightly under his thumb. He sighed. See, I break things. You fix them. I am not your babysitter, I shouted, marching up to the desk. I refuse. Send me back to the sludge. Bram looked at me. His eyes, which I realized were a strange amber color, narrowed. You yell at me, he observed. Everyone else shakes. Everyone else begs. You yell. Because you're being unreasonable. I like it, he decided. It cuts through the noise. He leaned forward. Stay, Rumi Kato, and I will give Sub-Basement C double rations for a year. I froze. Double rations? That meant real protein. That meant fresh water filters. That meant Tio wouldn't cough so much in the winter. He knew exactly where to hit me. Triple rations, I countered, narrowing my eyes, and I get full access to the scavenger junkyard to build parts, no questions asked. Bram smirked. It was a terrifying, wolfish grin that showed too many white teeth. Done, he rumbled. Welcome to the high tower, little Spark. Don't call me Spark, or I'll weld your door shut. I believe you would.
Chapter 3. Living in the high tower was weird. My quarters were a guest suite larger than the entire maintenance bay. I had a real bed, a shower with hot water, and a view of the frozen apocalypse outside. But I wasn't relaxing. I was working. Bram wasn't joking about breaking things. In 3 days, I fixed his datapad, a crushed screen, his door handle, ripped off, and his coffee mug, crushed into powder. You have anger issues, I told him on day 4, sweeping up ceramic shards from the war room floor. It is not anger, Bram grunted, pacing the room like a caged animal. It is energy. I am contained. I need to run. So use the treadmill. I broke it. I sighed. Of course you did. I stood up and looked at the main climate control panel for the sector. I had been analyzing the data since I arrived. Something wasn't right. Bram, I said, dropping the informal tone. Look at this. He stopped pacing and loomed over my shoulder. His heat was radiant, like standing next to a furnace. I tried to ignore how good it felt in the chilly room. What is it? The geothermal core. I pointed to the red line on the screen. It's fluctuating. The output is dropping by 2% every hour. That's why you've been feeling hotter. The cooling pumps for the city are slowing down. A malfunction? No, I zoomed in. Look at the code. Someone inserted a command line to throttle the pumps. This is sabotage. Bram went still. The playful, clumsy giant vanished. In his place stood the Warlord. Sabotage. His voice was a low growl that vibrated in my chest. From inside? It came from the administration terminal. I said, that's Director Haynes's office. Haynes. He has been arguing for a population cull to save resources. If the core fails, the sub-basements freeze first. He's trying to kill the poor to save the rich. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. Tio is down there. If the pumps stop, Bram said, looking at me, can you restart them? Not from here. The command is locked. I'd need to manually override the core. But I hesitated. The core needs a new regulator valve. The current one is burned out from the throttling. We don't have parts for that. That tech is pre-frost. Bram turned to the window, looking out at the white void. There is a pre-frost military depot, Sector 7. It's 50 miles out, in the dead zone. 50 miles? I laughed nervously. Bram, no vehicle can survive 50 miles in the dead zone. The fuel lines freeze. The tires shatter. I can survive it, Bram said. He turned to me. I am going to get the part. You are going to guide me via radio. You'll die, I argued. It's minus 60 degrees out there. You might run hot, Sasquatch, but you're not invincible. I am harder to kill than you think, he said grimly. I'm coming with you, I blurted out. Bram stared at me. No, it is death outside.
You don't know what a regulator valve looks like. I grabbed his arm. You'll come back with a toaster oven. I'm the engineer, Bram. If we need that part to save the city, I have to verify it. Rumi. And I can drive the crawler, I said. I rebuilt one in the junkyard. I insulated the fuel lines myself. It can make the trip. Bram looked at me. He looked at the screen showing the dying core. He looked at the sub-basement levels where my people were freezing. Fine, he growled, but you stay in the crawler. If you step into the snow, I will carry you back over my shoulder. Deal, I said. Now let's go save the world, but put a jacket on for God's sake.
Chapter 4. The airlock hissed, a sound like a dying dragon. I sat in the driver's seat of the rusty bucket, my heavily modified, uglier-than-sin, all-terrain crawler. It was basically a tank made of scrap metal and optimism. Bram sat in the passenger seat. He filled the entire cabin. He was wearing a heavy fur cloak, but he had refused the thermal undersuit. It itches, he had complained. You are impossible, I muttered, flipping switches. Fuel mix rich, heaters at max, treads engaged. The massive steel doors of Sector 4 groaned open. The world outside was blindingly white. The wind howled, shaking the heavy vehicle. Sector 7 is north-northwest, Bram said, pointing a gloved finger. Follow the old highway markers. If you see movement, do not stop. Movement? I laughed. Bram, nothing lives out here. It's the apocalypse. Things live, Bram said darkly. Things that are hungry. We rolled out into the waste. The cold seeped through the metal instantly, fighting my heaters. For an hour, we drove in silence. The landscape was haunting, ruined skyscrapers poking out of snowdrifts like tombstones. So, I said, trying to break the tension, Director Haynes, why haven't you fired him? Politics, Bram grunted. His family controls the hydro farms. If I kill him, the city starves. If I let him live, the city freezes. Ah, dystopian bureaucracy, my favorite. Suddenly, the crawler lurched. Crunch. What was that? Did we hit a rock? Bram was staring out the reinforced side window. His posture was rigid. No, he whispered. Something slammed into the side of the crawler. The entire 5-ton vehicle slid sideways on the ice. Frost stalkers, Bram roared. Drive, go faster. I slammed the accelerator. What is a frost stalker? I saw it in the rear view, a white shape, massive and shaggy, running on 4 legs. It was bigger than a polar bear, and it was fast. Bam! Another one hit us from the other side. The glass on Bram's door spiderwebbed. They're trying to flip us, I yelled. They're too many. Bram unbuckled his seatbelt. What are you doing? Stay in the seat. They will breach the cabin, Bram said, calm, terrifyingly calm. I have to draw them off. You can't go out there. You'll freeze. They'll eat you. Bram turned to me. He reached out and cupped my cheek with his massive hand. His palm was searing hot against my cold skin. Keep driving, little spark. Get the part. I will find you. Bram, no! He kicked the door open. The wind roared into the cabin, instantly blinding me with snow. Bram leaped out into the white void. I slammed on the brakes, spinning the crawler around. I wasn't leaving him. Through the swirling snow, I saw him. Bram stood alone against 3 massive mutated beasts. He looked small compared to them, but then he roared. It wasn't a human scream. It was a guttural, earth-shaking sound that drowned out the wind. And then Bram began to change. His spine snapped upward. His fur cloak seemed to merge with his body. He grew, expanding, shifting, tearing out of his clothes until he wasn't a man anymore. He was a wolf, a massive charcoal black wolf, easily the size of the frost stalkers.
I sat in the cockpit, my mouth hanging open, watching as my boss, the guy who couldn't use a thermostat, tore the throat out of a mutant bear. "Well," I whispered to the empty cabin, "that explains the hair."
Chapter 5. The silence after the roar was heavier than the snow. Outside the shattered window of the crawler, the 3 frost stalkers lay dead, their white fur stained crimson. And standing over them was the massive black wolf. He panted, steam billowing from his jaws in the freezing air. He looked at me through the broken glass, his amber eyes intelligent and human. Then he staggered. He collapsed into the snow, shivering violently. "Bram!" I screamed, unbuckling my harness. I didn't think. I grabbed the emergency thermal blanket and kicked the door open. The cold hit me like a physical punch, sucking the air from my lungs. I scrambled over the ice to where the wolf had fallen, but the wolf was gone. In his place lay Bram, human, naked, bleeding from a deep gash on his shoulder. "You idiot!" I choked out, throwing the thermal blanket over him. He was burning up, literally radiating heat like a stove, but he was shaking. "You jumped out of a moving tank to fight polar bears? Who does that?" Bram opened one eye. "Did I win?" "Yes, you won," I grunted, grabbing his arm. "Now get up. I can't carry 300 pounds of Warlord back to the vehicle." "I am tired," he slurred. "I don't care. Move your legs or I'm leaving you here to become a popsicle." I hauled him up. He leaned heavily on me, his skin searing hot even through my thick coveralls. We stumbled back to the crawler. I shoved him into the passenger seat and slammed the door, locking out the wind. I cranked the heater to max, but the fan just sputtered and died. "No!" I hit the dashboard. "No, no, no! Don't you die on me!" The console remained dark. The frost stalkers had damaged the external power cell during the impact. We were stranded, 50 miles from home, in a blizzard with no heat. I looked at Bram. He was wrapped in the blanket, pale and bleeding. "The heater is dead," I whispered. Bram laughed weakly. "Ironic. The engineer freezes." "Shut up," I snapped, grabbing the first aid kit. "Nobody is freezing. I'm Rumi Kato. I fixed a sewage leak with duct tape and a prayer. I can fix a punctured lung." I pulled the blanket back to check his shoulder. The claw marks were deep, ugly, but as I watched, the blood stopped flowing. The skin began to knit together, stitching itself up before my eyes. "What?" I stared at the wound. "How are you doing that?" "Regeneration," Bram murmured, his eyes closing. "Part of the curse." "Curse?" I scoffed, though my hands were shaking as I cleaned the blood away. "That's not a curse, Bram. That's a superpower. Now hold still. I need to make sure you didn't break any ribs." "Rumi?" "What?" "Thank you for coming back." "Don't get sentimental," I muttered, wrapping the blanket tighter around him. "I just need you alive to sign my paycheck." Chapter 6. 2 hours passed. The temperature inside the cabin dropped to 0. I was wearing every piece of clothing I'd brought, plus a tarp I found under the seat, but I couldn't stop shivering. My teeth were chattering so hard I thought they might crack. Bram, on the other hand, was a furnace. He was sleeping, or unconscious, but the heat coming off him was the only thing keeping the air from turning liquid. "Rumi," his voice rumbled in the dark cabin. "I'm awake," I stuttered. "Come here." "I'm fine in the driver's seat." "You are hypothermic," Bram growled. "Your lips are blue. Come here." He opened the thermal blanket. Underneath, he was still naked, because I didn't have clothes that would fit a giant. That is inappropriate, I argued, though my body was already leaning toward the heat source. "You are my employer." "I am a heat source," he corrected. "Do not be stupid. Get in." I looked at the frost creeping across the inside of the windshield. I looked at Bram's broad, warm chest. Survival 1. Fine.
I grumbled, climbing over the center console. "But if you try anything weird, I will stab you with my screwdriver." "I am too exhausted to try anything," he muttered. I crawled under the blanket. It was heaven. It was like stepping into a hot bath. I pressed my frozen back against his chest. He wrapped his massive arms around me, pulling me tight, effectively cocooning me in warlord warmth. "Better?" he asked, his chin resting on top of my head. "Acceptable," I whispered, my shivering finally slowing down. We lay there in the silence of the storm. I could hear his heart beating, slow, strong, steady. It was a comforting rhythm. "So," I said quietly, "Wolf." "Yes." "Is that why you run hot? Why you break everything?" "The beast is strong," Bram admitted. "It is hard to control fine motor skills when your hands want to rend and tear, and the metabolism, it burns, always burning." "That sounds exhausting." "It is lonely," he said. "People fear the warlord. They would be terrified of the wolf." "I wasn't terrified," I pointed out. "I was mostly annoyed that you got blood on the upholstery." Bram's chest rumbled with a laugh. "You are strange, Rumi Kato. You see a monster and you worry about the cleaning bill. I'm practical. Monsters I can deal with. Stains are permanent." He tightened his grip on me. "You saved me." "You saved me first. You fought the bears." "I would fight the world," he murmured, his voice dropping lower, sounding sleepy again, "to keep you warm." My breath hitched. That sounded suspiciously romantic for a man who claimed to have no feelings. "Go to sleep, Bram," I whispered. "We have to walk to the bunker in the morning." "Sleep," he agreed. And for the first time in my life, I fell asleep safe, warm, and completely unafraid in the arms of the most dangerous thing on the planet.
Morning brought sunlight, but no heat. The storm had passed, leaving the dead zone sparkling and deadly silent. We had to walk the last 2 miles. Bram had fashioned a toga out of the thermal blanket because his clothes were shredded. He looked ridiculous and terrifying at the same time, like a barbarian king lost in the Arctic. "The bunker entrance is there," Bram pointed to a concrete mound half buried in a snowdrift. "Sector 7, the armory." "It looks sealed," I noted, trudging through knee-deep snow. "It is. That is why I brought the engineer." We reached the massive blast door. It was rusted shut, covered in 50 years of ice. "Okay," I said, dropping my bag. "I can't hack the keypad because there is no power. We need to force it manually." "Stand back," Bram said. He grabbed the wheel of the blast door. He groaned, his muscles bulging, veins popping in his neck. The metal shrieked, ice cracked. With a final massive heave, he spun the wheel. The door groaned open just enough for us to squeeze through. We slipped inside. The air inside was stale, dry, and cold. Emergency lights flickered on, sensing motion, bathing the corridor in eerie red light. "Creepy," I whispered, my voice echoing. "This is exactly how horror movies start." "Stay behind me," Bram commanded, moving into his protective alpha mode. We walked deeper into the facility. It was a time capsule, desks with papers still on them, coffee mugs from before the frost. "The regulator valve should be in engineering." I checked my data pad, which was running on 12% battery. "Level B2. We took the stairs. Level B2 was a massive warehouse filled with crates. "Jackpot!" I grinned, running to the nearest shelf. "Bram, look! Thermal couplers, fusion cells. This stuff is pristine." "Focus on the valve," Bram warned, scanning the shadows. "I smell ozone." "You smell everything," I dismissed him, climbing a ladder to reach the top shelf. "Found it. Mark IV regulator valve, still in the packaging." I grabbed the heavy metal box. "We did it! We can save the core!" "Rumi!" Bram's voice was sharp. "Get down now." "Why?" Click. The sound of a heavy lock engaging echoed through the warehouse. Then another. Then the hiss of hydraulics. "The doors!" Bram roared, running toward the exit. He was too late. A massive steel shutter slammed down over the doorway, sealing us in.
What? I scrambled down the ladder. Who locked us in? This place is abandoned. A voice crackled over the ancient PA system. Citizen Kato, Warlord O'Connell, so glad you found the part. I knew that voice. Smooth, arrogant. Director Haynes, I whispered. I must thank you. I couldn't risk my own men in the dead zone, but I knew you two would be foolish enough to try. Haynes, Bram shouted at the ceiling, open this door. I'm afraid not, Haynes chuckled. You see, with you gone, I have assumed emergency command of Sector 4. The population cull has begun, and as for you two, well, I'm venting the oxygen from level B2. It should take about 10 minutes. A loud hiss filled the room. The air vents opened, but air wasn't coming in. It was being sucked out. He's suffocating us, I realized, clutching the valve. He's killing us and taking the sector. Bram looked at the steel door. He looked at me. Can you open it? He asked. It's electronically locked from the outside, I panicked. I can't hack it without a terminal. Bram walked to the door. He placed his hands on it. Then I will break it, he growled, or I will die trying.
Chapter 8. The air was getting thin. My head started to swim. Bram was pounding on the steel door. Every hit shook the room, denting the metal, but it was reinforced blast-grade steel. It wasn't budging. Bram, stop! I gasped, sitting on the floor. You're using up the oxygen. Save your breath. I will not let you die in a box, he snarled, hitting it again. His knuckles were bloody. We need a lever, I wheezed, my engineer brain trying to work through the hypoxia. Physics. We can't punch it. We need leverage. I looked around the room. My eyes landed on a forklift, an ancient electric forklift. Brum, I pointed. The forklift. The battery might be dead, but the hydraulics are manual. Bram turned. He understood instantly. He ran to the forklift. He ripped the safety cage off like it was cardboard. He grabbed the forks with his bare hands and manually lifted them. No, he pushed the machine toward the door. Wedge it, I instructed, crawling over. Under the door. Then we pump the jack. Bram shoved the metal forks under the tiny gap at the bottom of the blast door. Pump it, he yelled. I grabbed the manual hydraulic lever. I pumped. Clank, clank. Nothing happened. It's too heavy, I cried. Together. Bram moved beside me. He didn't use the lever. He grabbed the bottom of the door with his claws, digging into the steel. When I lift, he growled, his eyes glowing gold, you put the crate underneath. Bram, that door weighs 10 tons. Lift, he roared. His muscles swelled. The fabric of the thermal blanket tore. He shifted partially, his hands becoming paws, his jaw extending. He channeled every ounce of alpha strength into one impossible heave. The door groaned. It lifted 6 inches, 10 inches. Now! I shoved a crate of solid tungsten bolts under the door. Bram let go. The door slammed down onto the crate. The wood splintered, but the tungsten held. There was a gap, a 2-foot gap. Go! Bram shoved me toward it. You first! Go! He pushed me through. I scrambled under the door, scraping my back. I rolled into the hallway and took a deep gulp of oxygen. Bram squeezed through after me. He collapsed on the floor, shifting back to human, gasping for air. We're out. We're alive. Bram sat up. He looked furious. Haynes is dead, he said, his voice deadly calm. He tried to kill my mate. I froze. You're... what? Bram looked at me. He realized what he had said. He didn't take it back. He tried to kill my mate, he repeated, standing up and offering me his hand. Come on, Rumi, we have a government to overthrow and a warlord to murder. I took his hand. Right, treason first, relationship labels later. Agreed. Chapter 9.
The drive back to Sector 4 was significantly less terrifying than the drive out, mostly because the blizzard had cleared, and also because my passenger was currently staring at me like I was a prime rib steak he wanted to ask to prom. "Stop looking at me," I muttered, gripping the steering wheel of the crawler. "Eyes on the road, Bram, or the ice, whatever this desolate hellscape is." "I cannot look away," Bram rumbled. He was wearing the thermal blanket like a toga again, clutching the tungsten box containing the regulator valve on his lap like a teddy bear. "You saved us. You used leverage." "It was basic physics, Bram. A fulcrum and a lever. Archimedes figured it out in ancient Greece. It's not magic." "It was brilliant," he insisted. "You are small, but your brain is heavy." "Did you just call my brain fat?" "I called it formidable." He shifted in the seat, wincing slightly as his healing shoulder rubbed against the belt. "Back there, I said something." "You said a lot of things. You yelled 'lift' very loudly." "I called you my mate." I tightened my grip on the wheel until my knuckles turned white. I had been trying to ignore that part. In romance novels, which Teo hoarded like gold bars in the basement, the mate declaration was usually followed by fireworks or a passionate makeout session in the rain. In reality, it was followed by us gasping for air on a dirty concrete floor smelling like hydraulic fluid. "Yeah, I heard that," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Look, Bram, I know adrenaline does weird things to the brain. You were hypoxic. You were basically high on lack of oxygen. Let's not make it weird." "It is not weird," Bram said, his voice dropping to that low, vibrating register that made the heater vents rattle. "The wolf knows, Rumi. Before you, the fire was consuming me. I was always burning. My skin felt too tight. My temper was a leash I was constantly pulling against." He reached out, placing his massive, hot hand on mine on the gear stick. "With you," he whispered, "the fire settles. You are the coolant in my reactor. You are the only thing that makes the noise stop." I looked at him. His amber eyes were so open, so painfully honest. It wasn't a pickup line. It was a confession of loneliness so deep it made my chest ache. He wasn't just a warlord. He was a guy who had been overheating for years, finally finding a cold spot on the pillow. "I'm a coolant?" I repeated, my throat tight. That is the most unromantic yet technically accurate compliment I have ever received. "Is it unwanted?" he asked, looking genuinely terrified of my answer. I sighed, lacing my greasy fingers through his warm ones. "No, Bram, it's not unwanted. But if you think being your mate means I'm going to stop yelling at you when you break things, you are sorely mistaken." Bram grinned, leaning back against the headrest with a look of pure satisfaction. "I would be disappointed if you stopped yelling. Your rage is cute. Call me cute again and I'm driving into a snowbank." "Cute," he whispered, closing his eyes. I kept driving, trying to ignore the fact that I was smiling like an idiot in the middle of the apocalypse.
Chapter 10. We reached the perimeter of Sector 4 just as the sun began to dip, painting the ice in shades of bruised purple and blue. "Stop here," Bram commanded, sitting up. "Kill the engine." I cut the power. The crawler shuddered into silence behind a ridge of ice, hidden from the main gates. "Why are we stopping?" I asked. "We have the part. We need to storm the gates, hero style." "Look," Bram pointed. I squinted through the binoculars. The main gate of Sector 4 was locked down, but it wasn't just closed. There were new flags flying, red and black, Haynes's colors, and on the walls, enforcers were patrolling with thermal rifles. "He's locked it down," Bram growled. "Thermal scanners. If we approach in the crawler, they'll see the engine heat signature from a mile away and blow us to scrap." "So we can't go in the front door," I said, putting down the binoculars. "Great. Plan B?" "We wait for nightfall," Bram said. "I scale the wall, I kill the guards, I open the gate."
Bram, that wall is sheer steel and 200 feet high. You're a werewolf, not a spider, and you're still healing. I can do it, he insisted, though he rubbed his shoulder subconsciously. No, I shook my head. We are not doing the macho suicide run. We're doing the smart run. We're going in through the back door. Bram frowned. There is no back door. The dome is sealed. There's always a back door, I smirked. It's just unpleasant. I pulled up a schematic on my datapad. The waste disposal output. Sector 4 dumps its treated sludge into the frozen ravine on the east side. The chute is wide enough for a person or a warlord. Bram stared at the map. Then he stared at me. The horror on his face was absolute. The poop chute? He whispered. It's treated sludge, I defended. It's mostly sterile. Look, the thermal sensors won't pick us up there because the pipe is insulated. We crawl up the pipe, bypass the grinder, which I can disable remotely if I get close enough, and pop out in sub-basement C, my turf. I am the warlord of the frozen wastes, Bram stated, crossing his arms over his toga. I have conquered cities. I have slain beasts. I do not crawl through excrement tubes. Would you rather freeze to death out here while Haynes kills your people? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Or would you rather get a little dirty and save the world? Bram looked at the flags on the wall. He looked at the tungsten box with the regulator valve. He let out a sigh that sounded like a deflating tire. You are going to be the death of my dignity, he grumbled. Your dignity was gone the moment you put on that toga. I patted his arm. Let's go, big guy. Hold your nose.
Chapter 11. The smell wasn't actually that bad. It smelled like chemicals and old broccoli. It smells like death, Bram gagged behind me. It smells like betrayal. Quiet, I hissed, my voice echoing in the metal tunnel. Sound carries. We were crawling on our hands and knees up the sludge outlet pipe. I was in front, holding a flashlight. Bram was behind me, complaining. My knees are wet, Bram whispered. What is this substance? Is it organic? It's lubricant, I lied. Keep moving. We reached the maintenance hatch that led to sub-basement C. I pulled out my multi-tool and cracked the electronic lock. It sparked, then clicked open. I pushed the hatch up and climbed out onto the familiar grated floor of the maintenance bay. It was dark. Usually this place hummed with machinery and the shouts of workers. Now it was silent and freezing. It's cold, I whispered, my breath pluming in the air. Bram, look at the gauges. Bram climbed out, shaking sludge off his hands with a look of profound disgust. He looked at the wall thermometer, 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Haynes cut the heat, Bram growled, his eyes flashing gold in the dark. He actually did it. He turned off the radiant flooring to the lower levels. My people, I gasped. Teo! We ran through the silent corridors toward the workers' dorms. The doors were all closed, frost creeping along the seams. I banged on the door of Dorm 4. Teo, it's Rumi, open up. Silence. Then a slow scraping of a lock. The door creaked open an inch. A pale, shivering face peeked out. Rumi? Teo whispered. He looked terrible. His lips were blue, wrapped in 3 blankets. You're alive. The announcement said you were executed. I'm harder to kill than that. I pushed the door open. Teo, are you okay? The room was packed. Dozens of workers were huddled together in a pile in the center of the room, sharing body heat. Children were crying softly. Old people were coughing. Bram stepped into the room behind me. Teo gasped, backing up. The Warlord, don't kill us. We didn't do anything. The room erupted in fearful whimpers. They saw the giant, scarred man covered in sludge and saw a monster. Bram didn't roar. He didn't command. He looked at the freezing children. He looked at the frost on the walls. Without a word, Bram walked to the center of the room. He sat down on the cold floor right in the middle of the huddle. I am running at 105 degrees, Bram announced loudly. I am a heat source. Come closer. The workers hesitated. He won't bite, I said, my voice thick with emotion. He's the heat stove. Get in there. One brave kid, a little girl with a runny nose, crept forward and touched Bram's arm. She felt the heat.
She immediately snuggled into his side. That broke the dam. The workers swarmed him. Within seconds, the terrifying warlord was buried under a pile of freezing people, acting as a living radiator. Bram looked at me over the heads of the people clinging to him. He didn't look angry. He looked purposeful. "This is Haynes' doing," Bram said to the room, his voice low but furious. "And tonight, Haynes pays for every shivering child." I watched him, my heart swelling so big I thought it might burst. Yeah, he definitely pays.
Chapter 12. We spent an hour warming everyone up. Bram was a trooper, letting toddlers use his biceps as pillows, but I knew we were on a clock. The core was destabilizing. If we didn't install the valve soon, it wouldn't matter who was in charge. We'd all be dust. Okay, I clapped my hands, standing on a crate. Listen up. The room went quiet. Bram stood up, gently dislodging a grandmother from his shoulder. He moved to stand behind me, crossing his arms, the silent muscle backing the loud brain. "Director Haynes thinks we're frozen," I announced. "He thinks we're weak. He thinks he can turn off our life support and we'll just quietly die so he can have longer showers." Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. But he forgot one thing. I held up the tungsten box. "We have the valve. We have the cure. We just need to get it to the penthouse." "We can't," Tio said, shivering. "The enforcers have the elevators locked down. There are guards on every level." "Exactly," I grinned. "They're watching the elevators. They're watching the stairs, but they aren't watching the vents." I turned to the crowd. "I need every maintenance worker, every plumber, every electrician. We know this building better than they do. We know which walls are hollow. We know which pipes lead where." "What's the plan, Rumi?" a burly welder asked. "Distraction," I said. "Bram is going to take the main elevator. He's going to make a lot of noise. He's going to draw every enforcer in the building to the lobby." Bram nodded grimly. "I am excellent at making noise." "While he's being the bait," I pointed to Tio, "we are going up the ventilation shafts. We're going to bypass security and sneak into the core room. I fix the machine, we turn the heat back on, and then—" I looked at Bram. "And then I take the high tower," Bram finished, "and I remind Haynes why you do not corner a wolf." "Are you with us?" I shouted. "Yes," the room roared back. Bram leaned down to my ear. "You are a natural leader, little spark. You command them better than I ever did." "I don't command them," I whispered back, grabbing my wrench. "I just unionize them. Now let's go start a revolution." "After you," he bowed mockingly, "my sludge-covered queen." "Don't push it, dog boy." Chapter 13. The plan was simple. Chaos. We stood at the base of the massive freight elevator in the sub-basement. It was the only lift big enough to carry heavy machinery, or a very angry warlord. "This is it," I said, handing Bram a radio I had scavenged. "Channel 4 is our tactical frequency. If you scream, I'll assume you're dying." "I do not scream," Bram grunted, checking the magazine on a pulse rifle we had taken from the armory. "I roar. It is distinct." He looked at me. He was still wearing the dirty thermal blanket toga, but somehow he managed to look like a king preparing for war. "Rumi," he said softly. "Yeah? If I do not make it to the penthouse." "Don't," I cut him off, tightening the straps of my tool bag. "Don't do the tragic goodbye speech. You're indestructible, remember? You heal." "I am not indestructible." He stepped closer, ignoring the 50 maintenance workers watching us. He reached out and tucked a greasy strand of hair behind my ear. "You are my weakness. If Haynes finds you—" "He won't," I promised. "I'm smaller than him and faster, and I have a wrench." Bram smiled, a sad, crooked smile. "Be safe, little spark." He leaned down and kissed me. It wasn't a passionate movie star kiss. It was hard, desperate, and tasted like fear. It was a promise. "Go," he whispered against my lips. He stepped into the freight elevator and hit the button for the lobby level. The gears groaned and he began to rise. I turned to my army. Tio, the welders, the plumbers, the electricians. They were armed with pipe wrenches, blowtorches, and nail guns. "All right, sewer rats, let's go clog the system." We ran for the ventilation shafts.
Chapter 14. The elevator rose slowly. Clank, clank, clank. I closed my eyes, focusing on the beast inside. It was scratching at the door of my mind, desperate to get out. It smelled the blood in the air. It smelled the betrayal. Haynes. The man I had trusted. The man who had sat at my table, drank my wine, and called me friend while plotting to freeze my city. The elevator dinged. Lobby level. The doors opened. The lobby of the high tower was filled with Haynes's elite enforcers. 30 men in black armor, holding thermal rifles. They were waiting for me. "Target acquired!" the captain shouted. "Fire!" They opened fire. I didn't take cover. I roared. The sound shattered the glass of the reception desk. It hit the men like a physical wave, stalling them for a split second. That was all I needed. I dropped the pulse rifle. I didn't need it. I shifted. The change was instantaneous this time, fueled by rage. My bones cracked, reshaping. Fur exploded from my skin. I grew until I was looking down at the enforcers from a height of 7 feet on all fours. The dire wolf had arrived. I launched myself into the center of the formation. I swiped a massive paw, sending 3 armored men flying into the marble wall. Their armor crumpled like tinfoil. Bullets. They stung like bees, digging into my fur, but my body pushed them out as fast as they entered. I was a juggernaut of muscle and teeth. I wasn't killing them. Rumi would be mad if I made a mess. I was disabling them, crushing weapons, breaking legs, throwing them through windows. "Fall back!" the captain screamed, firing wildly. "It's the beast! He's unkillable!" I snarled, snapping my jaws inches from his face. He fainted. I looked up at the ceiling, toward the penthouse where Haynes was hiding. "I am coming for you, Administrator." And I hoped, with every beat of my massive heart, that the little engineer in the air ducts was safe.
"Quiet," I hissed, kicking T.O. in the shin. We were crawling through the main HVAC duct above the 40th floor. It was a tight squeeze. Below us, through the vent slats, we could hear chaos, alarms blaring, gunfire, and the distinct, bone-rattling roar of a very angry wolf. "He's doing it," T.O. whispered, eyes wide. "He's actually fighting the whole army." "He's the distraction," I reminded him. "Focus, we're almost at the core room." We reached the junction. To the left was the penthouse. To the right was the geothermal core access. "Okay," I instructed the team. "Unit B, you go left. Cut the power to the penthouse elevators. Lock Haynes in. Unit A, with me to the core." We shimmied right. We reached the grate overlooking the core room. I peered down. It wasn't empty. 2 technicians were down there working at the terminal, and standing guard were 4 enforcers. They're trying to overload it, I realized, reading the screens from above. They aren't just throttling it anymore. Haynes wants to blow the core to cover his tracks. "If that core blows," Tio whispered, "the whole dome collapses." "We have to drop," I said, pulling my wrench. "There are 4 guys with guns, Rumi. We have hammers." "Physics," I grinned. "We have the high ground." I pulled a canister from my bag. "Industrial solvent." "On 3," I whispered. We dump the solvent on the floor. It's slicker than ice. 1, 2, 3. We poured the gallons of slick chemical goo through the grate. It splashed onto the polished metal floor below. The enforcers looked up. "What the— now?" I kicked the grate out. We dropped. I landed, clumsily, on a stack of crates. Tio landed on a technician. The enforcers tried to run at us, but as soon as their boots hit the solvent, they wiped out. It was like a cartoon. Feet flew into the air, heavy bodies slammed onto the metal floor with satisfying thuds. "Get them while they're down," I yelled. My team swarmed them. A welder tackled an enforcer. An electrician zapped another with a stripped wire. I ran for the main console. The technician tried to stop me. "Don't touch that," he shouted. "It's unstable." I didn't argue. I swung my heavy wrench. Clang. It connected with his hard hat. He crumbled. "I'm the engineer," I snapped, stepping over him. "I touch what I want." I looked at the screen. Core integrity, 15%. Critical. "Okay,"
I breathed, taking the tungsten box from my bag. Surgery time. Chapter 16. The regulator valve was heavy, cold, and complicated. I had to manually bypass the safety interlocks, rip out the old fused valve, and install the new one while the machine was vibrating like a washing machine with a brick inside. "Tio, hold the light steady," I yelled, trying to unscrew a bolt that was hotter than the sun. "I'm trying! The whole room is shaking!" The alarms were screaming now. Warning. Meltdown imminent. "Come on," I gritted my teeth, burning my fingers on the housing. "Fit, you stupid piece of metal." Slam. The door to the core room burst open. It wasn't Bram. It was Haynes. He stood there, surrounded by his personal guard. He looked disheveled, sweaty, and furious. He was holding a pistol. "Step away from the console, Miss Kato," Haynes ordered. I froze, my hand deep inside the machine. "Director," I said, not turning around, "if I let go of this valve, the pressure spike will vaporize us both in 3 seconds." "I have an escape pod," Haynes sneered. "You don't." "You're going to blow up your own city?" I asked, turning slowly. "Just to kill a warlord?" "Bram is a relic," Haynes shouted. "He is a chaotic beast. I bring order, and if I have to burn this sector to the ground to rebuild it correctly, I will." "You're insane," I noted. "I am a visionary." Haynes raised the gun. "Goodbye, engineer." Crash. The ventilation duct above Haynes exploded. A massive black shape dropped from the ceiling. It wasn't a man, it wasn't fully a wolf. It was the halfway point, the halfway monster that nightmares are made of. 7 feet tall, bipedal, covered in fur, claws the size of steak knives. The wolfman landed directly on Haynes's guards. Roar! The guards didn't even have time to scream. Bram swatted them aside like dolls. Haynes shrieked, firing his gun wildly. The bullets hit Bram's chest and did nothing but make him angrier. Bram grabbed Haynes by the lapels of his expensive suit. He lifted the director off the ground, bringing him face to face with a muzzle full of razor-sharp teeth. "You," Bram growled, his voice a distorted, guttural rasp, "are fired." He threw Haynes, not at the wall, at the airlock chute labeled External Waste Disposal. Bram slammed his paw on the release button. The chute opened. Haynes screamed as the vacuum sucked him out into the frozen, unforgiving dead zone. The chute slammed shut. Silence returned to the room, broken only by the angry beeping of the core. Bram turned to me. He was panting, his eyes wild, gold, and terrifying. He looked like he might kill me next. "Bram?" I whispered. He blinked. He looked at the machine. He looked at me. "Fix it," the monster rasped. I turned back to the console. I shoved the valve into place. I turned it. Click. The humming stopped. The vibration ceased. The red lights turned green. Core stabilized. Output normalizing. I slumped against the machine. "It's fixed." I looked back at Bram. The monster was gone. Bram lay on the floor, naked, human, and unconscious. "He really needs to stop destroying his pants," Tio whispered in the silence. "Shut up, Tio," I said, smiling through tears. "Give me your coat."
Chapter 17. The express elevator ride back to the penthouse was awkward, mostly because it contained me, a very traumatized Teo, and a naked, unconscious warlord wrapped in Teo's oversized, grease-stained trench coat. "I'm never getting that coat back, am I?" Teo whispered, eyeing Bram's massive form slumped against the elevator wall. "Consider it a donation to the revolution," I said, checking Bram's pulse. It was strong. Too strong. His skin was burning hot, his metabolism working overtime to knit the bullet holes in his chest. The doors opened. We dragged him into the living room and dumped him onto the velvet sofa. "Okay, Teo," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Go back downstairs. Tell the crews to keep the heating vents open. I want the sub-basements at 70 degrees by midnight. If anyone gives you trouble, tell them the warlord is currently recharging."
Recharging. Right. Tail looked at Bram, who let out a snore that shook the chandelier. You gonna be okay with him? He ate a guy, Rumi. He threw a guy, I corrected. There's a difference. Now go. Tail fled. I was alone with the beast. I went to the bathroom, grabbed a bowl of cold water and a towel, and started cleaning him up. He was a mess of soot, blood, and cooling rage. As I wiped a smudge of oil from his cheek, his hand shot out. He gripped my wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to stop me. His eyes opened. They were human again, amber, exhausted, and focused entirely on me. Haynes, he rasped. Frozen, I said softly. Like a TV dinner. You threw him out the disposal chute. Bram let out a long breath, his grip on my wrist relaxing into a caress. Good. The chute fits him. He tried to sit up, wincing. The coat slipped. I grabbed a throw pillow and aggressively covered his modesty. Stay down, you giant idiot, I scolded, pushing him back. You took 6 bullets to the chest. I don't care if you have Wolverine blood. You need to rest. I healed, he argued, poking a finger through a hole in his skin that was already pink and scarred. See? Closed. The internal damage takes longer. Your organs are probably playing musical chairs, and you destroyed your pants. Again, do you know how hard it is to find size XXXL pants in the apocalypse? I'm going to have to sew you a kilt. Bram laughed. It was a rusty, unused sound. You are scolding me, he murmured, pulling my hand to his mouth to kiss the grease-stained knuckles. I just conquered a city for you, and you are worried about my wardrobe. I'm practical, and I'm not scolding you. I'm maintaining you. You're high-maintenance equipment, Bram. Come here. He tugged on my hand. Bram, you need to sleep. I need my coolant, he growled softly. Get in the pile, Rumi. I looked at him. He was battered, he was overwhelming, and he was looking at me like I was the only heat source in the world. Fine, I sighed, kicking off my boots, but only for 10 minutes. I have to draft a new constitution for the sector. 10 minutes, he lied. I climbed onto the sofa. He wrapped me up instantly, burying his face in my hair. You smell like hydraulic fluid, he whispered contentedly. And you smell like wet dog, I whispered back, closing my eyes. We're a match in heaven.
Chapter 18. 2 days later. The transition of power in Sector 4 was surprisingly smooth, mostly because everyone was terrified of the Warlord, and the Warlord was terrified of me. I sat at Bram's massive mahogany desk, which I had lowered because he was a giant and I was not, reviewing the energy distribution charts. We have a surplus, I announced. Since we aren't diverting 40% of the power to Haynes's hydroponic weed farm, yes, he had a weed farm, we can run the lights in the sub-basement 24/7. Tio, who was now officially the Deputy of Engineering, took notes. The workers want to know if we can reopen the rec center. Approved, I stamped the form. And tell the kitchen to stop boiling the vegetables until they're gray. Texture is a human right. The door to the office creaked open. Bram walked in. He was wearing sweatpants, thank God, but no shirt, of course. He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his massive arms, watching me run his city. You enjoy the chair, he noted. It has good lumbar support. I didn't look up. Also, you're supposed to be in the med bay getting your vitals checked. The doctors are afraid of me, Bram grunted, walking over. They try to take my temperature and the thermometer breaks. Because you run at 105 degrees, Bram, stop scaring the medical staff. He stopped at the side of the desk. He loomed. Tio immediately closed his notebook. I'm gonna go check the pipes. In the basement, far away from here. Tio scrambled out. You scared the deputy, I said, finally looking up. I want my office back, Bram said, petulantly. You hate this office. You said the paperwork made your head hurt. I want you, he corrected. You have been working for 48 hours. You have fixed the core, you have fed the people, you have reorganized the grid. He walked around the desk, spun my chair around, and placed his hands on the armrests, trapping me. You have neglected the Warlord, he growled, his eyes flashing gold.
The warlord is a big boy, Rumi, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. He can entertain himself. I am bored, he leaned down, his nose brushing my nose. And I am hot, the fever is back. I touched his chest, he was searing. You're always hot, Bram. Not like this, he whispered. This isn't metabolic, this is instinct. The wolf is restless. He claimed a mate, but he hasn't had the mate. My breath hitched. We had been dancing around this since the crawler, the touches, the sleeping in the same bed, the mate label, but we hadn't actually crossed the line. Is that a threat? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It is a plea, he murmured, his lips grazing my jawline. I am burning alive, Rumi. Put out the fire. I looked at the door, I looked at the stack of paperwork, then I looked at the 6'6" wall of muscle who literally tore a door off its hinges to save me. Lock the door, I whispered. Bram didn't walk to the door, he didn't use a remote, he just kicked it shut with his foot, engaging the deadbolt with a resounding thud. Done, he said.
Chapter 19. The click of the lock changed the air in the room. It went from office to den in 3 seconds flat. Bram scooped me up out of the chair. I wrapped my legs around his waist instinctively, my grease-stained coveralls frictioning against his bare skin. Bram, I gasped as he carried me toward the bedroom. I'm dirty. I haven't showered since the Corps. I don't care, he growled, kicking the bedroom door open. I like the grease. It smells like work. It smells like you. He threw me onto the bed, the massive king-sized mattress that had felt so big when I was alone, but felt tiny now that he was hovering over me. He crawled onto the bed, caging me in. He didn't touch me yet. He just stared. His pupils were blown wide, eating the amber iris. Do you know, he said, his voice rough and low, how long I have watched you before the summons? You watched me? I watched the feeds, he admitted. Maintenance Bay C. I watched you yell at your assistant. I watched you fix impossible machines with scrap metal. I watched you wipe grease on your face and look like a warrior. He reached out, tracing the shape of my lips with a calloused thumb. I thought I was just impressed, but my wolf knew. Every time I saw you on the screen, my temperature spiked. My skin felt too tight. I thought I was sick. So you summoned me to fix your AC. I smiled weakly. I summoned you because I needed to be near the coolant, he corrected. And then you yelled at me. You told me to put on a shirt. You called me wasteful. He laughed, a dark, husky sound. No one speaks to me like that. It was intoxicating. I have a big mouth, I admitted. My mother always said it would get me in trouble. It got you a kingdom and a monster. He lowered his weight, pressing me into the mattress. The heat coming off him was overwhelming. It seeped into my clothes, into my skin, warming the perpetual chill that lived in my bones. Are you afraid? He asked, searching my eyes. I am big, Rumi, and I am not entirely human right now. I looked at him. I saw the scars on his chest, I saw the wildness in his eyes, but I also saw the man who let orphans sleep on his arm because they were cold. I'm not afraid, I said, reaching up to tangle my fingers in his messy hair. I'm thermally regulated. I can take the heat. Bram groaned, a sound of pure surrender. Then take it all, he whispered. Chapter 20. When Bram kissed me, it wasn't tentative. It was an avalanche. He kissed me like he was starving, and I was the last ration bar on earth. His mouth was hot, demanding, and thorough. I tasted coffee and wild mint. My hands roamed over his back, feeling the ridges of muscle and the rough texture of old scars. Every time I touched him, a low rumble vibrated in his chest, a purr, a literal wolfish purr. You're purring, I gasped, breaking the kiss for air. It's a growl of satisfaction, he corrected, nipping at my neck. Don't analyze the acoustics, engineer. I analyze everything, I breathed, as his hands found the zipper of my coveralls. He peeled the heavy fabric down.
The cool air of the room hit my skin, but it was instantly replaced by his heat. "You are so small," he murmured, pulling back to look at me. His large hand spanned my entire waist. "I feel like I will crush you." "You won't," I said, pulling him back down. "I'm structural. I have a high tensile strength." He laughed against my skin. "Structural." The humor faded as things heated up. Bram wasn't gentle, but he was incredibly careful. He moved with a restrained power, treating me like I was made of glass, even as his eyes burned with a feral need. When we finally connected, the sensation was indescribable. It wasn't just physical, it was thermal. A wave of golden warmth flooded my mind. I felt his emotions, the crushing loneliness he had carried for years, the overwhelming release of finding me, the fierce protective instinct that roared, "Mine." "Rumi," he choked out, burying his face in my shoulder. "I've got you," I whispered, holding him tight. "I'm right here." The mating bond snapped into place. It felt like a circuit completing, like a machine finally receiving the right voltage. The background noise of the world, the cold, the fear, the hunger, faded away. There was only the heat. Hours later, or maybe minutes, I lay sprawled on his chest. He was wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, his breathing slow and deep. The fever was gone. His skin was still warm, but it wasn't burning. The frantic, radiating heat had settled into a comfortable simmer. "You cooled down," I noted, tracing a scar on his pectoral muscle. "I balanced," he murmured, sleepily, tightening his hold on me. "You regulated the flow." "See?" I kissed his chest. "Just a faulty valve." "No," he whispered, drifting off to sleep. "Not a valve. A heart. You fixed the heart." I smiled, listening to the steady beat under my ear. "Same thing," I said, technically speaking.
Chapter 21, Epilogue 1. 6 months later, the high tower didn't look like a villain's lair anymore. It looked like an engineering workshop that had exploded. I sat at the main desk, surrounded by blueprints for the new hydroponic gardens. My coveralls were stained with oil, my goggles were perched on my head, and I was eating a ration bar that actually tasted like chocolate, thanks to our new trade deal with Sector 7. "Rumi!" Teo burst into the room. He was wearing a clean uniform with a badge that said Head of Infrastructure. "The delegation from Sector 9 is here. They're terrified." "Why are they terrified?" I asked, not looking up. "We sent them a fruit basket." "They aren't afraid of the fruit," Teo whispered. "They're afraid of him." I looked up. Through the glass wall of the office, I could see the landing pad. Bram was there. He was greeting the ambassadors. By greeting, I mean he was looming over them, shirtless, despite the fact that I bought him 12 shirts, holding a massive battle axe. He looked like he was deciding which one of them would make the best snack. "Oh, for heaven's sake," I sighed, grabbing my wrench. "I can't leave him alone for 5 minutes." I marched out onto the landing pad. The wind whipped my hair, but the ambient temperature of the sector was now a balmy 65 degrees, thanks to the stabilized core. "Bram!" I shouted. Bram froze. The terrified ambassadors flinched. Bram turned slowly. He saw me marching toward him with a wrench. His scary warlord scowl vanished, replaced by a sheepish grin. "Little spark," he rumbled. "I was just explaining our border policy." "You're holding an axe, Bram." "It is ceremonial." "It has a blood stain on it." "Old blood," he defended, "from the Frost Stalker incident last week." I stopped in front of him, putting my hands on my hips. I looked at the trembling ambassadors. "Hi, I'm Rumi, the engineer. Please ignore the giant wolf man. He's harmless unless you touch the thermostat. Welcome to Sector 4. The lead ambassador blinked. You command the beast?" "I manage him," I corrected. "There's a difference. Now, go inside. Teo has hot cocoa." The delegation scurried past us. When we were alone, I turned to Bram. "You promised to be diplomatic." "I tried," he grumbled, dropping the axe, "but they smell of fear. It triggers my prey drive." "Everything triggers your prey drive. The toaster triggered your prey drive yesterday."
It burned my bagel. It deserved to die. He stepped closer, wrapping his massive arms around me. He was warm, perfectly, comfortably warm. The fever that used to plague him was gone, regulated by the bond, but he was still the best heater in the world. "You smell like grease," he whispered, kissing my forehead. "And you smell like trouble. Go put on a shirt, we have a meeting." "Make me," he challenged, picking me up effortlessly. "Bram, put me down. The ambassadors are watching through the window." "Let them watch," he growled. "Let them see who really runs this city." He carried me back inside, and for once I didn't argue, because he was right. I ran the city, but he kept it safe.
Chapter 22. Epilogue 2. 1 year later. The domestic bliss of the warlord and the engineer was loud. Crash. I sighed, putting down my book. I walked into the nursery. Yes, the nursery. Bram was standing in the middle of the room. He was holding a tiny, delicate picture frame. Or rather, he was holding the shards of a picture frame. There was a massive hole in the drywall. "I tried," Bram said, looking tragic. "I tried to use the tiny hammer." "Bram," I rubbed my temples, "you punched a hole in the wall." "The nail wouldn't go in," he roared softly. I applied pressure. The wall failed. It was structural weakness. "It was drywall, Bram. You applied alpha pressure to drywall." I walked over and took the shattered frame from his hands. It was a picture of our wedding day. Me in a white grease suit, I insisted. Him in a tuxedo with the sleeves ripped off. "I'll fix it," I said. "Go sit down. You're banned from home improvement." Bram slumped onto the rocking chair. It creaked ominously under his weight. "I am a failure," he muttered. "I can conquer wastelands. I can kill mutants, but I cannot hang a picture of my family." "You're not a failure." I walked over and sat on his lap. He automatically wrapped his arms around me, his heat seeping into my back. "You're just high torque." "The pup will be small," he whispered, placing a large hand on my stomach. "What if I break him? What if I try to change a diaper and I rip the changing table in half?" I smiled, covering his hand with mine. "You won't, I promise, because you're not just a brute, Bram. You're a space heater. You know how to be gentle. You kept a room full of freezing orphans warm without waking them. That was strategic thermal distribution," he grunted. "It was cuddling," I corrected. Suddenly, a sharp pain kicked against my ribs. "Oof," I gasped. Bram's eyes flashed gold. "What, is it time?" "No," I laughed. "He just kicked. Hard." Bram leaned down, pressing his ear to my stomach. He listened intently. Then he went pale. "Bram?" I asked. "What is it?" He looked up at me. His expression was a mix of terror and awe. "Rumi," he whispered, "there isn't one heartbeat." "What?" "There are 3. I stared at him. "3? As in triplets?" "It's a litter," he said, a slow, terrified grin spreading across his face. "We are having a litter." I looked at the hole in the wall. I looked at the broken picture frame. I looked at the giant wolfman who broke things he touched. 3, I whispered. 3 mini Brahms, running around, breaking things. "I will need to reinforce the walls," he said, looking around the room with sudden, intense focus. "Steel plating, titanium cribs. We're gonna need a bigger heater," I groaned. Bram laughed, a deep, booming sound that filled the room. He pulled me close, burying his face in my neck. "I'm ready," he promised. "I'll keep them warm. You keep them from destroying the city." "Deal," I kissed him. "I love you, little spark." "I love you too, big furnace. Now go fix the wall. Use duct tape this time." "Yes, ma'am." The end.
And that, my friends, is how a frozen engineer melted the heart of the most dangerous warlord in the wasteland. From a cold sub-basement to a nursery full of love and broken drywall. I hope this story brought a little bit of warmth to your day. If Rumi and Bram's journey touched you, or if you felt the heat of this story through your screen, please consider hitting that super thanks button below. It's the little heart icon with the $ inside. Your super thanks are the literal fuel that keeps my generator running. They allow me to keep creating high-quality, immersive audiobooks just for you. Every single contribution means the world to me and helps this channel grow stronger. If you aren't part of the pack yet, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a mate claim. Thank you for listening, thank you for your support, and until next time, stay warm and remember, even the coldest hearts just need the right spark.